Sal said they're gonna watch the show. I have to watch their
Jeff?
fucking. Yeah, I have to watch their fucking
Whoa.
anime that they want me to watch.
Dan it Dan or whatever the hell it is.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I just don't care about people in high school. Like, whatever there's a
I
high school setting.
also don't.
Like,
Yeah,
Chainsaw Man's different because they're not in high school, you
in
know what
high
I mean?
school. Yeah,
Like, they're that
and
age, but they're
also,
not in high school.
well, Denji's the only one,
Yeah. Well, Power
at least in
would
the
probably
first
be like
part.
his age.
Yeah, roughly.
Alright, we're on chapter 66. Do you remember what happened at the end of the last one?
Um, didn't they? I mean, didn't they go back?
Yeah,
Didn't,
they.
didn't Shaylin go back to the?
Yeah, let me see. I think he went back and he met up with Xuan Yizhen and then he went and picked up Pei Ming from the island.
Yes, 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 and he made all these fucking coffins.
Yeah. And then they returned to Puchi Shrine and then Chi-Rong's yelling at him, um, dog fucked Shilian, dog
Right,
Hua Chung, have you two no
right.
shame? And then Shilian's sitting down and thinking, and he has the thought, hatred was what made ship sinking black water, then what about Crimson Rain saw flower? What made Hua Chang Hua Chang?
Right. I
And
do
he
remember
shook his head
that.
to will away the phantom of that noble, gracious, special someone and organized his thoughts. And then they were discussing Reverend of Empty Words and like Blackwater and all that. And Hua Chung says that Blackwater wasn't the person who pulled in all those fishermen into the sea.
Yeah, I remember that.
So the last paragraph, however, Hua Chung had to correct him on that point. Gaga, I don't know if he's the one who killed the real Earthmaster, but I'm afraid someone else dragged those fishermen into the storm on the East Sea. So we're at chapter 66. Ache of separation, the agitated heart sends the path of ink astray.
Does not need to be that long.
Shilian was taken aback. Then who could it be? Generally speaking, storms like that should involve more than 50 people. I suspect it may be the same person who sent that empty shelled cultivator during the Banue Pass incident. Now that he mentioned it, it did seem like there was a hand pushing him to the heart of every case, every time. Feeling a little baffled, Shilian wondered, what could that person possibly be after? Huacheng shook his head, but he also seemed pensive. Suddenly, the sounds of children laughing and playing were heard from outside, and his eyes shot to the window. Following his cutting gaze, Shilian saw only two small children. Geze was riding atop Lang Ying's shoulders, looking completely untroubled and carefree. The Watermaster audaciously deceived the heavens and committed a criminal substitution. The Windmaster was a fake, and the Earthmaster was an impostor. On top of all of that, the Watermaster's severed head was nowhere to be found. Four cases, each a bolt from the blue, and each a burst of explosive thunder that rocked the heavens. Each one was more deafening than the last. This naturally raised a tidal wave that flooded the upper and middle courts. Everyone was so shaken that they had no idea what to say about the matter, and only crickets could be heard in the Palace of Divine Might. Even Jun Wu's hand didn't seem able to prop up his head any more. Mingyi had never really gone out of his way to befriend anyone, and barely anyone was close to him aside from Shi Qingxuan, and he enjoyed pestering others and assumed everyone was his friend from the moment they met. However, the shock was truly too great when they realized that one of their own colleagues was a legendary Supreme Ghost King. Over the past centuries, that Ghost King had worked with dedication and diligence to properly play the role of Earthmaster. He had amassed a large number of worshippers in the mortal realm, and he even managed to make it to the top 10 during the Battle of the Lanterns at the Mid-Autumn Festival banquet. It was honestly frightening, just as expected of a supreme ghost king. Now, even if someone announced that Hua Cheng was among them or had planted a spy in the upper court, no further news could surprise them. There was no question that the one who murdered the real Earthmaster, Yi, was Black Water Demon Xuan, even without mentioning the grudge he held against Watermaster Wudu. The upper court thus released an official warrant for his arrest, but everyone knew that a supreme ghost king who wanted to stay hidden wouldn't be so easily found. As the saying goes, all will tread on a man when he falls. The Wind and Water Masters once stood in greatness and glory, with hundreds who would answer their call. Shiwudu was extolled and celebrated every time he appeared, yet after his violent death, his supporters cowered, not daring to breathe a single breath too loud. Shi Qingxuan loved making friends and was generous to all, but now those good friends were nowhere to be found. Pei Ming collected Shiwudu's headless corpse from the Netherwater Manor, and the ceremony he hosted was quiet and sparsely attended on the day of his burial. There were barely any heavenly officials in attendance besides Shilian and Ling Wen. Hold on, I just gotta fucking pop up on my... Please don't tell me my computer is gonna restart. It's not telling me what that was. Great.
Great.
Privacy? Security? Why are you open? Well, let's hope my computer doesn't restart. Shilian thought of how, in recent days, bands of people had already started to burn down and desecrate temples of wind and water. He couldn't bear the sight of it, and tried on several occasions to stop them. But he knew the acts of aggression would only grow worse as time passed and people discovered their prayers no longer being answered. He could stop them once, but he couldn't stop them forever. In 10 years, or perhaps in only 3 or 4, people would completely forget the heavenly officials of wind and water who used to rule at the summit of heaven. Shilian couldn't help but feel melancholy. Once the funeral was over, Shilian turned to Ling Wen. The whereabouts of Lord Windmaster of Qingxuan is now in your hands. We're counting on you. Ling Wen looked solemn. She hadn't smiled in days. Even without your Highness's appeal, I would still do my utmost in this duty. Your Highness, why not talk to that crimson rain-sought flower of yours instead of waiting around while the palace of Ling Wen drags their feet? Oh, this is Pei Ming. Your Highness, why not talk to that crimson rain-sought flower of yours instead of waiting around while the palace of Ling Wen drags their feet like an old ox pulling a broken cart? Pei Ming asked. Can't you have him ask that mad ghost Blackwater where he's taken Qingxuan? He already took Watermaster Shang's head. What more does he want? Shilian shook his head. General Pei, please don't assume such things are doable, he replied helplessly. Does one Supreme Ghost King need to keep the other informed on whatever he wants to do? With that, Pei Ming didn't say anything more. When Shilian returned to Puchi Shrine, many of the villagers were milling around the shrine, whispering amongst themselves. Shilian didn't need to ask to know what was happening, thanks to the clearly audible yowling coming from within his shrine. Hi, Wesker. The village chief was visibly scared and nervously tugged at him. Dao Zhang, your mad little cousin, he's... The excuse Shilian had given the world was that Shirong was his insane younger cousin, family he'd taken in out of obligation after he'd been rejected and left without anyone willing to care for him. On some level, this was not entirely a lie. Is he throwing a fit again? Don't worry, he's properly locked up. He won't escape. Everyone can go home, Shilian said. Oh, the villagers murmured amongst themselves and dispersed. Before the group fully broke up, the village chief gave Shilian a basket of eggs. Dao Zhang, you're Xiao Hua. Shilian was confused at first. Xiao Hua? Then it dawned on him. Oh, San Lang? To the outside world, Hua Cheng was currently posing as Shilian's younger blood brother who had run away from home and come to visit for fun. Shilian couldn't help but feel a little flustered. Yeah, let me tell you, Your Xiaohua helped us repair some stuff again today, so you'll have to reward him well tonight, the village head said. Yeah, add some supplements to his meal. Make him big and strong. He'll do an even better job. Shilian couldn't help but chuckle. I will, for sure, for sure. When he opened the door, Lang Ying was already curled up in a corner and fast asleep. Chi Rong, meanwhile, was lying on the ground like a corpse and wailing as though his innards were on fire. Geze was massaging his shoulders and back. Dad, do you feel any better? Shilian removed the bamboo hat from his head and put the eggs down. What's with you? Ate something bad? As long as you don't fucking cook me anything, I won't suffer from stomach aches even if I lick shit and grime off the ground, Chirong spat. Listening to him exaggerate, Shilian crossed his hands in his sleeves. Then why don't you try licking those things to test your theory? Gross, 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 Chirong spat again. What the fuck did I say? You're exposing your dark side again, trying to torture me in all sorts of ways. Yes, my good son, that's good, that's good. Now chop this side. Ugh, fuck. What the fuck's going on? I've been so agitated lately, yelling like a fucking tomcat and rut. Am I sick? Cousin Crown Prince. I'm sick. I must be sick, 'cause you've been torturing me, you goddamn snow lotus. You're out for blood. Shilian crouched and felt his forehead. Are you running a fever? After a pause, he dropped his hand and frowned. You aren't. You're not faking this, are you? Chirong was going to start cussing again. Geze explained pitifully. Dao Zhang, my dad didn't lie to you. He hasn't been feeling well. He's been crying in misery for a long time now. Watching Chirong squirm around on the floor, Shilian shook his head and rose to his feet. He was about to look for the medicine box when he noticed that the donation box was heavy. Hua Cheng had only recently built it, so it shouldn't have anything inside. Puzzled, Shilian took the key out to open it, and his jaw dropped when he was greeted by the blinding sight of densely packed, glimmering gold bars. Wham! Shilian quickly shut the donation box again. Hold on, I gotta let Venus out. You wanna leave?
Yes, she does.
Ugh.
I love how Chirong just has a kid now.
Yeah, he just has a son now. He had already returned the gold bars that the Watermaster had given him. Did someone else send them back? It couldn't be Hua Cheng. He wouldn't do something as simple and crass as stuffing him full of gold bars. Shilian turned his head. Chirong, did someone come by? He asked. Chirong jabbed his finger at him and cussed. Hey, what's wrong with you? Do you take me for your guard dog? Do you think you're a supreme? Even a supreme isn't this shameless. Not even that stinking Blackwater or that goddamn Hua Cheng would dare take me for a guard dog. Bang! Someone kicked open the door of Puchi Shrine, and that someone was Hua Cheng. Chirong went mute the moment he saw him, and silently wriggled to a corner of the shrine, not daring to say anything more about what he saw that night. San Lang, you're back, Shilian said. Hua Cheng smiled cheerfully. Yeah. Thanks for your hard work, Shilian said.
Yeah.
Yeah. The village chief wanted me to give you these gifts as a reward. We'll have something nice to eat tonight. Sounds good, Hua Cheng said. But, Gege, do you want to come to my place tonight? Ghost City? Shilian asked. And take that thing along, too, Hua Cheng said, pointing at Chirong. We'll see if there's any way to pull his soul out. Shilian hummed for a moment. That's probably a good idea, he acquiesced. They shouldn't keep dragging their feet about this. Of course, the most important reason was that Chirong ate too much, and Puchi Shrine could no longer provide. When Chirong heard they were going to send him to Ghost City, his face drained of color, and he objected as hard as he could. But his objections, not the objectifications, his objections all fell on deaf ears. With a puff of smoke, Hua Cheng turned him into a green Budao Wang. It's like those little teeter-totter thing, like the little statue that he turned the other guy into.
Okay.
And Geze carried him in his arms as they left for Ghost City. As he strolled down the main street, Shilian saw that Ghost City was as bustling as always. The ghosts remembered Shilian, and they all shouted greetings when they saw that he had come to visit. Granduncle! No, Chengzi's lord friend, you've come again. Quack! Is it because you miss our specialty street food? Quack. Shilian had brought the basket of eggs along, and he gave them away as souvenirs from the mortal realm. Those he bestowed an egg upon danced with joy. Some declared that they would eat it stewed in their own blood, and some proclaimed that they
Oh,
would hatch a 25-meter tall Yao beast from it.
oh.
Hua Cheng released the spell on Chi Rong. With another blast of green smoke, the man possessed by Chi Rong appeared on the street. He was crouched low, clutching his head defensively, and not saying a word. However, some of the ghosts caught his scent. "Hmm? Ain't that the green ghost we smell?" they exclaimed. The crowd of ghosts approached and surrounded him. After taking a good sniff, they cackled at their findings. "Ha ha ha! It really is the green ghost! The dumbass is here again! Ha ha ha! Didn't you catch enough of a beating last time? You seriously came back?" "Watch over the little one," Hua Cheng said. "As for the big one, think of a way to drag him out of the body without hurting the flesh." "Yes, sir, my lord." Several lovely female ghosts picked up Guzza and hummed a little lullaby to put him to sleep. The rest of the nefarious creatures started playing tag with Chirong, or rather it was some game where the latter fled screaming from the former group's relentless pursuit. Hua Cheng and Shilian watched the show for a little while before heading inside Thousand Lights Temple. The two leisurely stepped into the hall and approached the altar, which was still stocked with brushes, inks, and paper. Shilian's heart had been heavy lately, and at the sight of that stationery he decided to relax the mood. He smiled softly. "Back when I taught you, I said you needed to practice when you had time, but I suppose you haven't lately." Hua Cheng cleared his throat. "Gaga, you gave my reward away to other people. What will I eat tonight?" Shilian arched his brows in an imitation of Hua Cheng. "Don't change the subject." "I can practice the sword, but not calligraphy," Hua Cheng said. "If Gaga isn't at my side to tutor me, I'll go astray while I practice all alone and get worse the more I write." Shilian's brows arched higher. "Sanlang is so smart. How can there be anything he's no good at?" Looking very humble, Hua Cheng picked up a brush and dipped it in a bit of ink. "It's true. Pray, Gaga, teach me." Shilian sighed. "Why don't you write something first?" Thus, Hua Cheng very seriously wrote 2 verses. Shilian watched for a bit, then couldn't bear any more. "Stop, stop. You'd better stop after all. Don't waste good paper and ink." "Oh," Hua Cheng said obediently, and he really did stop, putting the brush away. Shilian shook his head. "Sanlang, don't tell anyone that I taught you how to write, okay?" "Gaga, I really tried my best," Hua Cheng pouted. The way he spoke sounded almost aggrieved. Here was a perfectly splendid Supreme Ghost King whose name made all 3 realms shiver in fright, and he was standing there at that moment like a young student, obediently attentive to Shilian's critique. After lecturing him on a few crucial points, Shilian held his hand just as he had last time. "Let's try again. Be serious this time." "Okay," Hua Cheng said. They immersed themselves in composition. After they had practiced for a while, Shilian asked casually, "Why is it still ache of separation?" Hua Cheng answered casually, "I like this poem." "I like it too," Shilian said. "But does Sanlang have any other poems he likes? Once you're familiar with transcribing this one, you can try copying others." The poem only had so many words. The two of them had written it over a dozen times, so it should be time to change it up. However, Hua Cheng was adamant. "This one is fine." Setting the brush down, he blew gently on the ink and smiled. "If I like something, then my heart has no room for anything else. I'll always treasure it. 1,000 times, 1,000,000 times, my feelings won't change, no matter how many years pass. And so I won't tire of this poem." Shilian gave a smile. "Is that right?" "Hmm," Hua Cheng replied. Shilian released his hand and quietly cleared his throat. "That's a good thing. It's nice that Sanlang is such a sentimental man. Oh, why don't you practice some more by yourself? Ah, that's right. Chirong said he was feeling unwell lately." Hua Cheng settled the paper on the altar and picked up the brush again. "Unwell how?" Shilian turned around, his back now facing Hua Cheng. "He said that he felt agitated all over, but I looked him over and it didn't seem to be a problem with his host's body. It can't be because of the bad weather?" Behind him, Hua Cheng asked, "When did this start?" Within the past few days, I think, Shilian replied. Today was especially bad. Before he could finish his sentence, a sense of foreboding suddenly sprouted in his mind. Just then he heard a soft noise behind him, like an object had fallen to the ground. Shilian whirled around. San Lang? The brush in Hua Cheng's hand had dropped onto the snow-white paper and slashed a long, erratic trail of ink. Hua Cheng's expression was vaguely grim, and he was swaying slightly on his feet. He clutched the edge of the altar with one hand to hold himself upright, while the other one covered his right eye. Now we're on the next chapter. Chapter 67. Mount Tonglu reopens the agitation of ghosts. Judging from Hua Cheng's expression, it seemed his right eye was throbbing with unbearable pain. Shilian rushed forward. Are you all right? The corner of Hua Cheng's mouth twitched, but he forced back any words he wished to say. The silver eye engraved on Ming's hilt snapped open, and the eyeball started to spin wildly. Veins bulged under the skin of the hand that Hua Cheng had planted atop the altar. That hand seemed ready to flip the table at any second. Shilian reached out, wanting to touch him, but Hua Cheng only growled, Stay back! Seeing Shilian freeze, Hua Cheng gritted a plea through his teeth. Your Highness, please, get away from me. Hurry, I might... Shilian cut him off. How can you tell me to leave you when you're like this? Hua Cheng sounded harried. If you stay here any longer, Just then waves of hellish howls and cries sounded from outside Thousand Lights Temple. Ghosts were doubling over on the street, bawling their eyes out as they clutched their heads and wailed. They sounded like their skulls were splitting open, like they were on the verge of death. Qi Rong, however, was still dashing ahead at incredible speed. Although the flesh vessel had stifled his powers, his possession of a human body also acted as a protective barrier, so any attacks aimed specifically at ghosts were weakened. This was the only reason Qi Rong was still able to be up and about, and he seized this chance to flee. The female ghosts who had been cradling Geze had fallen to the ground, mewling in pain from their headaches, and were unable to continue singing their hypnotic lullaby. Geze groggily woke up to see Qi Rong bolting away like a madman, and he stumbled upright to chase after him. Dad! Dad! Wait for me! He yelled. As he ran, Qi Rong turned his head, stuck out his tongue, and rolled his eyes. Good boy! Daddy's off! Geze chased after him relentlessly on his short little legs, but when he saw that the distance between them was only growing bigger, he burst into tears. Dad! Please don't throw me away! Dad, take me with you! Get lost! Get lost! Don't follow me, you nuisance! Qi Rong began spitting at the boy. His spit flew so far it hit Geze on the forehead and knocked him onto his butt. He cried even harder, as if his heart were going to break and his lungs were going to burst. Shilian couldn't bear it any longer, and he furiously stormed out of Thousand Lights Temple. Qi Rong! The moment Qi Rong saw Shilian blocking the path in front of him, he spun around in fear and ran back the way he came. Along the way, he scooped Geze off the ground and yelled threats behind him. Don't come after me! Do it and I'll bite off this little deadweight's head to show you. My good son, you're going to become your old dad's meal. How filial! Dad'll cook you tomorrow. Braised or steamed, take your pick. Ha ha ha. Shilian wasn't fazed by the threat in the slightest, but just as he was about to give chase, a loud crash sounded behind him. As if struck by a sudden fury, Hua Cheng had swept all the stationery off the table and flung it to the ground. Left with absolutely no choice and no time to deal with Qi Rong, Shilian rushed back inside. San Lang! And then Hua Cheng caught him in a tight embrace. His voice trembled. I lied. Don't leave me. Shilian stood as still as an iron board, locked with those arms. San Lang, do you recognize me? It seemed like he had lost his senses and couldn't recognize the one in front of him. He clutched Shilian even tighter in his arms and muttered over and over, I lied, don't leave me. Shilian's eyes widened. Outside the temple, Qi Rong broke out in smug laughter while Geze wailed uncontrollably. Hua Cheng, you fucker! That'll teach you to look down on me all the time, he cackled. Look at you, so cocky all day. Down for the count, aren't you? That's karma. The ghosts howling on the street were exhausted by their misery, but upon hearing this, they cursed back with vigor. Green ghost, you useless piece of crap! How dare you mouth off our Chengzi? The annoying ruckus going on around them seemed to further provoke Hua Cheng's fury. Driven to the edge of his tolerance, he raised his hand to blast them to pieces. Shilian hastily returned the hug to hold his arm down. Okay, okay, he soothed. I won't leave. I won't leave you. With a flick of Shilian's hand, Thousand Lights Temple's grand doors shut by themselves. To prevent Chi-Rong from busting into the temple under these circumstances, Shilian hurled threats to shoo him away. If you're gonna go, then go. I don't have time for you. Careful, if you don't get lost, I might just... Ah! To his surprise, Hua Cheng was unsatisfied with the Shaola embrace. He roughly pinned Shilian down on top of the jade table, scattering ink, paper, and brushes across the floor. Caught up
Oh
in the
God,
struggle,
it's the
Shilian's hand
cover.
accidentally skimmed past the cinnabar dish stationed on the table, smearing crimson marks across the paper underneath him. On Ache of Separation's line, scattered from the peak of Mount Wu, there are no other clouds. The two characters of the peak were now stained with alluring streaks of vivid red, in an endlessly bewitching sight. Son, Shilian started. Before he could utter another word, Hua Cheng grabbed him by the shoulders and leaned down into a kiss. Chi-Rong had undoubtedly heard something that didn't sound right. He laughed uproariously. Cousin Crown Prince, you'd better be careful. That damn Hua Cheng is probably rabid right now. He'll bite whoever he sees. I'll help you spread the news personally. There are plenty of monks and cultivators out there who are enemies with that damn Hua Cheng, so they should take this chance to hurry here and get even with him. Shilian tensed as Chi-Rong's laughter faded into the distance. If Chi-Rong really did call forth a large band of cultivators who Hua Cheng had wronged, and they came to shoot a ghost while he was down, how could the ghosts of Ghost City escape harm in their current condition? But Hua Cheng wasn't allowing him even a moment to think. He was clearly not a living person, and should have no warmth in his body, yet at this moment he was searing hot, as if he had been stricken by a burning fever. With their lips pressed so tightly together, Shilian was forced to take in the waves of heat flowing into him. The hands that had intended to push Hua Cheng away instead dug into the folds of red fabric at his shoulders. Maybe it was because Hua Cheng's spiritual power was too potent, but Shilian felt filled to bursting by the warmth flowing down his throat, through his chest, and all the way into his stomach. So much that it was unbearable. If he was forced to keep enduring this, he was going to burst from the sheer amount of power that Hua Cheng was pouring into him. His jaw tightened, and he struck heavily with his palm. Although the blow did land, he couldn't bring himself to hit Hua Cheng in earnest, so all he'd done was tap his shoulder with inconsequential strength. Unfazed, Hua Cheng seized his wrist, held it down, and continued to press his heat directly into Shilian's mouth. If this continued, he really would be crushed. This time, Shilian used both his hands to push Hua Cheng away, then fled in panic to the other side of the altar, panting for breath. With his eye bloodshot, Hua Cheng pounded him, followed him, and pinned him down against the altar. Sun Long! Shilian cried. Perhaps his voice reached him, for Hua Cheng stared at his face for a long time, before abruptly wrapping him in a crushing hug. Seeing that Hua Cheng listened and stopped forcefully pumping spiritual power into him, Shilian sighed a breath of relief. However, as he stood in Hua Cheng's embrace, he could sense the energy inside Hua Cheng going berserk. No wonder Hua Cheng had kissed him the moment he caught him. With such wretched turbulence within him, he had to find an outlet to expel it. Bloodletting would be necessary for him to fully regain his senses. But Hua Cheng wasn't alive. How could he have any blood left? After much consideration, Shilian made a decision. Forgive me. He cupped Hua Cheng's cheeks and captured his lips with his own. Shilian then began to gently guide the turbulent flow of heat into his own body, helping ease Hua Cheng's pain and agitation. Hua Cheng looped his arm around Shilian's waist, eliciting a small shiver from him. In the next moment, the two tumbled down and sprawled atop the altar. It really wasn't fair. Shilian didn't dare touch anywhere on Hua Cheng that was even slightly dangerous, but in his confused state of mind, Hua Cheng's hands roamed every inch of his body without restraint, causing Shilian unspeakable torment. This altar was originally a place to worship the divine, but presented there this evening instead was a ghost and a god entangled in a fervent, inseparable embrace, their tongues entwined. It was absurd and strange, and yet a sight of breathtaking loveliness. The first few times they had committed this sort of act, they had been more or less clear-headed. There was a proper justification every time, and some measure of control, nothing beyond lips covering lips. But this time, one had confused the other. One was confused, and the other caught off guard, and these fervid kisses had crossed the line. Through the fog that clouded his mind, Chilian finally accepted something. Although every time this happened was out of his control, and he never had a choice, the truth was, he couldn't resist his feelings. Every time. He was tormented thus for half the night before the agitation within Huacheng finally began to calm. The arms that
Half the night.
Yep. The arms that embraced Shilian gradually slackened, and Shilian flipped over and sat up. He gazed at Huacheng's slumbering face, then breathed a sigh. Ming had been thrown to the side, and its eyeball was still frantically spinning. Shilian picked up the scimitar, and it was only after an extended petting session that Ming's eye finally relaxed into a smiling crescent, as if it had finally been satisfied. Not long after, Huacheng shot upright from where he had been sleeping. "Your Highness?" Shilian quickly adjusted his expression into a beaming smile, then turned to Huacheng. "You're awake? Everything's fine now." Huacheng scanned the room. Thousand Light's temple was an enormous mess. His face was uncharacteristically distraught, as if he couldn't remember what had happened the night before. Shilian jumped at the chance to speak, sounding calm and easy. "What happened last night? All your subordinates were suddenly struck with fevers and terrible headaches. Everyone was restless. You were too. You had quite the temper." "Besides that?" Huacheng demanded. Shilian blinked. "Besides what? Nothing else happened." Huacheng stared at him hard. "There really was nothing? Then how did I calm down?" Shilian cleared his throat softly, as if he was slightly embarrassed. "Sanlang, please don't be mad at me. To tell you the truth, other than this," he briefly raised the hand he was currently petting, Ming. "I also fought with you?" Huacheng eyed him doubtfully. "We
Yeah.
had a fight?" Shilian met his gaze
Uh-huh.
earnestly, face carefully neutral. "We did. Look, our
Uh-huh.
fight made quite a mess of the hall."
Oh.
There was a pause, then Huacheng puffed a sigh of relief and rested his head on his hand. Now that Huacheng was no longer hounding him for answers, Shilian finally released the breath he had been holding and let himself relax. "It opened," Huacheng muttered. "What did?" Shilian asked. Huacheng lifted his head and clarified with a somber voice. "Mount Tonglu reopened." Both were entirely aware of what that meant. Shilian's eyes widened. "A new Ghost King is about to be born?" When Shilian returned to the heavenly capital to report in, thunder was rumbling loud enough to match the news of Mount Tonglu. As he stepped into the Palace of Divine Might, Shilian subconsciously looked to a particular spot to inquire about this. "What's the matter with Lord Thundermaster?" He only realized after he voiced his question that the spot where the Windmaster once stood was now empty. The Watermaster in the frontmost row and the Earthmaster in the furthest corner, they too were gone. He blinked before sighing softly to himself. When he cocked his head to the side, he saw Lan Chinchou enter the hall. Shilian had not seen him for some time, and his entire person was one size thinner and much, much gloomier. His eyes met Shilian's. Then he turned around without a word. Lan Chinchou is the guy from the second season. As he scanned the room, Shilian realized he couldn't find anyone he could casually converse with. "It's nothing. A Ghost King is about to be born. Ghosts cry and gods sound, and the thunder won't stop." A voice answered his question. Surprisingly, the one who responded was Feng Xin. For some reason, Shilian found the sight of him instantly comforting. However, one of Feng Xin's eyes was blackened. Shilian couldn't help but turn to glance at Mu Qing, who was standing at the far side of the hall. One side of Mu Qing's face was swollen. After years of nursing their grudge, their recent brawl must have been quite brutal. Junwu called everyone to attention. "I am certain you are all aware of the reason I summoned you here." The heavenly officials all responded in the affirmative. Junwu continued, his speech unhurried. "The universe is a crucible, and living creatures are the copper. Infinite adversities abide within the abyss of suffering. Mount Tonglu is a naturally ominous realm with a landscape most perilous. It is a live volcano that can erupt at any time. Every few centuries, the city of Gu within the mountain opens its gates, and its call shakes the ghost realm. Its tremors especially affect its previous champions, the Ghost Kings. Every nefarious creature that desires to reach the level of Supreme will make their way to Mount Tonglu. Once they have assembled, Mount Tonglu will seal itself once more, and the slaughter will officially begin. When only one remains, a new Ghost King is born. Crimson Rain-Sought Flower and Ship-Sinking Blackwater are both Supreme Ghost Kings born by this method. The two became Supremes when they emerged from the mountain. It took Blackwater 12 years. It took Hua-Chung 10. It's already difficult enough to deal with one Blackwater. Oh, that's Mu-Ching. It's already difficult enough to deal with one Blackwater and one Hua-Chung. Just look at what they've done, Mu-Ching commented coldly. If another one comes along, we won't sleep a wink. General Xuanzhen, I won't comment on Blackwater, but I don't think Hua-Chung has done anything truly out of line. Shilian responded temperately. Mu-Ching, his cheek puffy and swollen, shot him a look. They are quite difficult to deal with, Pei Ming noted. So we must stop the millions of ghosts from gathering, am I right? Correct, Junwu said. The process will take a few months. We need to put a stop to it while we are still able. What if we don't stop them in time? Shilian asked. Is there any way to rally after that? There is, Junwu assured. But hopefully we will not reach that point. The primary focus of this juncture is that the agitation of the ghosts has created a wave of chaos. Many nefarious creatures that were once sealed away have escaped, and among them are some of the extremely dangerous, such as that female ghost Xuanji, the fetus spirit, the brocade immortal. They are likely hurrying to Mount Tonglu as we speak. They must be immediately apprehended once more. They've all escaped? Shilian remarked. This is quite the disturbance indeed. Which is why I'm afraid every martial god must expend some effort and thoroughly investigate the domains over which they preside, Junwu stated. Then, what about me? Shilian asked. While Shilian was a scrap god at the moment, he had ascended as a martial god the first 2 times. He was basically being used as a martial god right now too. The only difference was that he didn't have a domain. After deliberating for a moment, Junwu said, Shunle, why don't you go with Qi Ying? And that's the end of the chapter. That was the make-out chapter where they made out all night. Wait, I gotta show you the audio drama version. Because it's spicier.
It's just gonna be moans.
Yeah, it has other stuff.
Like whimpers.
Hold on.
Wow.
Ghost Rut. That's what it's called. His Ghost Rut.
Right.
Right.
It sure is. It sure is called that. That's crazy.
Alright, let me hold on, I'll stream this to you.
His Ghost Rut. Come on, man. Alright.
不是说浑身上下燥的慌，可是我查看过，好像并不是那肉身出了问题，总归不会是因为天气不好。
从什么时候开始的？
应该就是这几天，今天尤为严重。三郎，你怎么了？怎么捂着右眼？眼睛不舒服吗？三郎，让我看看。别过来！
Oh yeah, there's drawings to go with this scene too. They did extra.
我可能……你这样子叫我怎么离开？你再留在这里，我……
It's the ghosts.
我有肉身打人，你们没有，头痛死你们！你们倒是来追呀！
It's so
哎
silly.
呀，乖儿子， 你要给老爹当口粮啊，真是有孝心。干明儿个，爹就把你煮了，红烧还是清蒸你自己选。糟了，西柔，三老。
The way he stays with Hua Chang instead of going after the child that's being threatened. It's crazy.
三老，我说谎，别离开。三老，你认得出我是谁吗？我说谎，别离开。你别离开。
The fucking noise.
吵死了！三老，别，好，不离开。好了，三老，没事了，我不会离开你的。
Look, like there's art. It's good. The fucking music is great.
I feel like I should not be here. I feel like I'm intruding.
好疼！够了，不要再给我法力了。
I'm getting filled up. Jesus. Oh my god.
Dude.
你还在？对，你先让我起来。我帮你看看。
Oh, look at what, bro?
好乱，好强劲的法力。三郎，是不是很难受？把这个装来。
Do we know why he's doing this? Why this is happening?
Because the Mount Tonglu opened.
Oh. Okay.
三郎。
He's fighting for his life.
He's like, I have to fuck you or you'll die. Dude.
I shouldn't be here.
6 hours they did this.
That's literally insane.
He's touching him.
Don't pinch my waist.
这里不行，不该再往下了。
Let's hope dry humping is the next pandemic.
Why did you say that?
Because that's what they're doing. Let's hope dry humping is the next human face disease.
I don't even... All night long, man.
Yeah.
Gay people are crazy.
Bro, they were edging for 6 hours.
I could probably make out for 6 hours.
No way.
Yeah. the sigh.
Yeah.
希望三郎能好好
It's
的
been a
睡。
long night.
My God.
我这
Am
算
I
I
taking
taking
advantage? Because he wants to
前几
kiss
次借
him.
法力还能推手身不由己的，这
He's
次
admitting to himself that he
Dude,
wants
yeah.
it. He's realizing.
Dude, the feelings.
与其说每一次都是身不由己，不如说每一次都有情不自禁。啊！恶命！
He had to pet he had to leave to pet his sword.